Welcome back. In our last explainer, we dove into this whole idea of a body in a crisis of cold. A state where the body's internal furnace is just sputtering out, which the sources connect to what we typically call type 1 diabetes.
So, that's the big question, isn't it? And today, we are going to answer it. We're getting right into the weeds of the specific dietary protocol laid out in the sources. This is a step-by-step plan that's all about restoring that internal heat and rebuilding the body's core energy system from the ground up. All right, here's what's on the menu today. We're going to do a super quick recap of the core theory, just to make sure we're all on the same page. Then, we'll get into the principle behind this whole restoration idea before walking through the detailed protocol step by step. After that, we'll look at how you can actually see if it's working, and we'll wrap up with a really powerful new way to think about what your body's telling you.
Okay, first things first. Let's do a quick refresher on the two totally opposite states of energy crisis that the sources describe. You really have to get this distinction because, honestly, the entire protocol is built on it.
Now, this is where it gets so interesting. Instead of being related, these two conditions are framed as complete polar opposites. You've got one body that's literally overheating, running too hot, and it's using sugar as a coolant to put out the fire. And then you have another body that's basically freezing from the inside out because it has no fuel, and it's forced to just dump the sugar it can no longer use.
And here are the telltale signs of that crisis of cold. According to this framework, these aren't just random symptoms. Nope. They are direct signals that the body's main furnace, the marrow system, is running on empty and just can't generate heat anymore.
So how in the world do you deal with a state like that? Well, the sources suggest it's not about chasing symptoms. It's about going right to the source and refueling the body's primary engine.
In this way of thinking, the marrow system is where our internal fire comes from. Just picture it like the body's big, powerful central engine. It's what gives us our core heat, our physical strength, and it's what powers our immune system. So you can imagine, when that engine starts running out of gas, the whole system just gets cold. And this is the absolute key. The sources argue that this whole crisis kicks off because of a lack of one specific fuel: fat. When the body doesn't have enough fat to burn for heat, it makes a really desperate move. It starts burning protein instead. And that's a double disaster. Why? Because not only is protein a terrible source of heat, but burning it actually consumes the very building blocks of the marrow itself, causing the body's internal temperature to just plummet.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's see how this all comes together into a specific dietary plan designed to systematically fix this depleted system. This is the heart of it right here.
The protocol is built on 4 pillars, and each one is designed to solve a specific problem for the body. It tackles fluid balance, it provides the raw materials for rebuilding, it supplies the main fuel for the furnace, and then it makes sure that all that good energy gets delivered right where it needs to go.
So first up, we have to rehydrate and reheat the body's internal environment. The logic here is pretty cool. The ginger acts like a warming agent, helping to drive heat directly into that depleted marrow system. The tiny bit of sugar is for quick energy for the brain, and that pinch of salt helps the body hang on to the water it so desperately needs to recover.
Next up, protein, but it's a very specific kind, a 5-bean mix. The beans are roasted and ground into a powder, which makes them super easy for a weakened system to absorb. You mix this powder into a drink, and the whole point is to deliver the raw materials needed to physically rebuild the marrow tissue that's been lost.
And the source is really emphatic on this point. It suggests that this particular blend of vegetable protein is just perfectly suited for nourishing the stem cells inside the marrow. It's presented as, literally, the fastest and most direct way to get those building blocks in for recovery.
Okay, now for the main event, the fuel. The crucial step here is to seriously ramp up your intake of high-energy fats. This is what the furnace runs on. And you can see there's a whole variety of options here. The sources make a really key distinction. Fried foods provide a kind of intense, quick heat. Why? Because the cooking process itself infuses the food with that yang or hot energy. Then you have other rich sources like salmon, cheese, and nuts, which provide a slower, more sustained burn. The idea is to use both to give the marrow the dense fuel it needs to start cranking out some serious heat again.
And finally, the protocol includes specific aromatics that are believed to boost the warming effect of everything else. Think of them like catalysts or maybe a delivery service. According to the sources, things like onions, garlic, lemongrass, and ginger don't just add flavor. They actually help direct the energy from the fats and proteins specifically into the marrow, which just amplifies the whole reheating process.
Now, there is one rule that the sources say is absolutely critical, non-negotiable. To rebuild heat, you have to avoid anything that has a cooling effect, especially at night when the body is trying to do its repairs. Sour and bitter foods, and most fruits, are considered cooling and would basically be working against everything the protocol is trying to do.
Okay, so you're doing all this, but how do you know if it's actually working? Well, you don't have to guess. The sources point to specific, real, physical signs of recovery that you can actually monitor yourself.
And what's so fascinating is that this framework says the very first sign of recovery isn't something you'll feel in your core. Nope, it's going to show up at your extremities. This is the first signal that the furnace is back online and that heat is finally starting to move through the entire system again. This is it. This is the key indicator. When your feet are consistently warm again, that's the sign that the body's furnace is finally generating enough heat to push that warmth all the way to the farthest points of your body. It's the clearest sign that the marrow is getting refueled. And this chart just lays it out beautifully. It shows you the shifts to look for across the board. Frequent, clear urination turns into less frequent, pale yellow urine, a sign the body's holding on to water again. That difficult, restless sleep is replaced by deep, restful sleep because the body finally has the energy to repair itself. And of course, cold feet become consistently warm feet.
And the end game here. It's all about getting the body's core temperature restored and stabilized to a healthy 36.5 to 37 degrees Celsius. That's the temperature at which, according to this framework, all the body systems can work their best and protect themselves.
So let's zoom out for a second for our final thought. This whole framework, it's not just a diet. It's built on a completely different interpretation of what our body's signals actually mean.
From this point of view, a symptom that we're all taught to be afraid of is actually a really sophisticated, deliberate survival tool. In that hot crisis we talked about, the body isn't failing. It's using its own internal fire extinguisher to protect its most important organ. And this leaves us with a pretty provocative question, doesn't it? What could we learn if we stopped treating our body's messages as problems that need to be silenced and instead started treating them as intelligent communications that we need to understand? It suggests that maybe, just maybe, the key isn't to fight the body, but to figure out what it's asking for and give it the right fuel for the right crisis.